Why Ole Miss will beat the Duke Blue Devils in the Gator Bowl. I give you the answer key before Thursday's test.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched podcast and your daily source for everything Rebels. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're diving into the last dance for Jackson Dart and a senior class that has won an incredible 38 games over the last 4 years. Tomorrow's Gator Bowl showdown between Lane Kiffin and Manny Diaz is a critical moment for the Rebels with big implications for the offseason moving forward. Plus, could we finally see the much anticipated debut of Logan Diggs at running back? We'll break all of that down. Locked On Ole Miss is free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making us the first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. But for a second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss as well. So tomorrow, Ole Miss will take on the Duke Blue Devils, the first meeting between Ole Miss and the Duke Blue Devils in the Gator Bowl. Ole Miss is 1-2 all time in the Gator Bowl. Their lone win came against the Florida Gators back in the earlier 60s. And then they lost to the Auburn Tigers in 1971. And then they also lost to the Michigan Wolverines in like 1991. So that is the history in the Gator Bowl for the Rebels. Ole Miss is going to be solidly a favorite in this game. The line is starting to rocket up as we speak. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But as it sits right now, and looking at the rosters and everything that's going on, Ole Miss is severely the better football team than Duke this game. Duke is going for 10 wins. Duke is a good team, but Duke is going to be without their first starting quarterback and their backup quarterback. They're down to a third-string quarterback and somebody that played quarterback as a true freshman for David Cutcliffe way back when. That's 2 coaches ago that might take some snaps in a package this weekend. Star Thomas has entered the portal, and there's some debate of whether he'll play in the game as well. Ole Miss has, on the other hand, other than Chris Paul, everybody should be pretty much playing. Although I think that Juice Wells has also opted out. I don't know that for a fact, but I did see a practice video to where it looked like A.J. Maddox was wearing number 3 offensively, and they would not have made that switch if there was a number 3 already taken. So that's just my opinion on that, but just judging by the practice video that is going on. I think that even with the pitch count, it's going to be important for Ole Miss to get off to a fast start in this game because of the pitch count. If Ole Miss gets off to a fast start with the pitch count, everything can just kind of flow into the backups and the next levels and all of that, and Ole Miss will be all right. But if it gets off to a slow start, it's going to become a little bit more of an even football game for the Duke Blue Devils as it goes on. As players' pitch counts run out, Duke has a chance to make something happen. But I don't think that is likely going to happen. I think most people that have looked at this game has almost predicted a blowout. I think Ole Miss right now is a 17.5-point favorite in this game. And Ole Miss is in a position to really kickstart their 2025 Thursday night. But before all of that happens, which is probably the major storyline of this bowl game, is kickstarting 2025, we do need to take the opportunity to say thank you to the senior class that have won 38 games over 4 years at Ole Miss. With a win over the Duke Blue Devils, that is 3 10-win seasons in 4 years at Ole Miss. The last time that an Ole Miss team did that, it was like 1958 to 1962 or something like that. Those were the years where they got the wins like that. So thank you to all of the senior class that did that. The players like Trey Washington that were recruited in that stuck with the program. The transfer class of 2022, that'd be Jackson Dart, Jordan Watkins, Jared Ivey, J.J. Pegues, those guys. Thank you very much. The other transfers that came in, and of course the one and dones like Walter Nolan and Princely and Yellen. Thank you very much for everything over the last 4 years. It has been unbelievably fun. And yes, I do realize that Ole Miss did not hit their goal this season and what they wanted to do. But when you look at the last 4 years as a total thing, the senior class is going to go down as one of the best senior classes in Ole Miss history. Jared Ivey and Jackson Dart, the whole 9 yards. Jackson Dart is the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss history. He has the most career passing yardage. He has the most single game passing yardage. And in this game, he's about 170 yards away from the most single season passing yardage. Jackson Dart will be a Mount Rushmore level quarterback for the duration of his life at Ole Miss. I don't think he'll be the greatest of all time. He had a chance. I don't think he will, but he is going to be on that Mount Rushmore very, very solid indeed. When you look at the season that Dart had this year, 249 of 363, 3,875 yards, 25 touchdowns, 6 picks. Jackson Dart has did everything that you hoped that a quarterback would do. When you look at players like Jared Ivey, when you look at players like Walter Nolan, TJ Daugherty, who's coming back next year, but Chris Paul, who is not playing in the bowl game, the upperclassmen that led this season, is going to be a credit to what they've done. The Chris Paul and Chris Paul's dad, major excellent soldiers for the Ole Miss program over the last year. Thank you very much for that. Juice Wells making that unbelievable catch that put the Georgia game really away in the second half of that game. People can talk about the drop passes against Florida and against South Carolina and that, but he did make the catch against the Georgia Bulldogs, and I think he deserves credit. Jordan Watkins, who was simply the security blanket for Jackson Dart in all of his records, the one constant has been Jordan Watkins, who is the all-time Ole Miss single-game receiving yards leader when he just had a ridiculous game at Arkansas this year. This senior class has been very, very talented and gave Ole Miss fans a ton of moments. And they deserve all the plaudits of what's going on. And them, I think, whenever you look at this game, going out and wanting to leave on the right foot, Jackson Dart wants the Arkansas game to happen again. He wants another Penn State to happen. And you're playing against a defense that can allow that to happen. Manny Diaz is a tackle for loss guy. He is a sack guy. His defenses make plays in the backfield. He likes to run a lot of zero coverage when he can, because that allows an extra rusher to get after the quarterback. If you can beat that, which Ole Miss was able to do against Penn State a year ago, you have a chance to have a lot of success. So thank you to the senior class. And this senior class is absolutely huge. And I do think that any quick start that Ole Miss has is going to be because of the senior class. So we'll see what's going on with them. So let's look at the why Ole Miss wins versus the Duke Blue Devils. Duke has been crippled by opt-outs for the Gator Bowl. We'll talk about that. We've already talked about the last dance for the senior class, including Jackson Dart. Thank you very much for that. And the excitement that exists for 2025 has already began. That is the next step for the Ole Miss Rebels, and Ole Miss's fan base has already moved over to that level. We'll see exactly what's going on, and we'll talk about that immediately after the break. Before we do that, the Duke Blue Devils will be without starting quarterback Malik Murphy, who is transferring to Oregon State with most of Ole Miss's stars suiting up. How long will their last dance players stay on the field? When the pitch count is up, it's time for the next wave of Rebels to take the reins for what could be a dominant run in 2025 and 2026. Do not miss the breakdown. You know, there's nothing like the energy of being at a live game, the roar of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers squeaking on the court, and even spotting a few celebrities in the stands. I remember going to an NBA game a few years back, and the electricity in the arena was just unforgettable. You cannot replicate that watching from your couch. This year, I'm looking forward to catching more games live, maybe going over to the arena in Orlando. Game Time makes it easier than ever with their new Game Times Picks features. Whether it's basketball, concerts, or theater, Game Time helps you find the best deals on great seats without the hassle of endless scrolling. I just hopped on the app to check out tickets for an upcoming game, and the Game Time Picks made it a breeze to find a super deal on amazing seats. Plus, the app showed me a panoramic seat view so I could pick the perfect spot. No guesswork, no surprises, just sports. And it's not just the sports, though. Game Time also has incredible deals on concerts and comedy shows. I'm planning on going to a concert next month, and with all-in prices, I see exactly what I'm going to pay up front, no hidden fees at checkout. What I love most about Game Time is their lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with event cancellation protection, your tickets are covered even if your plans change. It's the most flexible ticketing lineup I have ever used. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so let's move on to the first thing whenever we look at why Ole Miss wins, and that is that Duke has a bunch of opt-outs in this game. Malik Murphy of the Duke Blue Devils, he was a transfer from the Texas Longhorns, originally went to Duke. He became their season leader in touchdown passes, had a really good year. Duke was actually close to winning 10 games in the regular season. Duke had a really good season. Manny Diaz had them ready to go, but after this bowl game happened, Malik Murphy opted out, and now he has been signed with the Oregon State Beavers. When you look at the backup opted out as well, and Star Thomas, the running back, is in the transfer portal as well. Duke has a lot of pieces that are missing on the offensive side of the ball, which means if this game gets over 14 points, if Ole Miss scores more than 14 points, they're probably going to win the game. Now, we have all seen bowl games to where the team that was disappointed to be in the bowl gets off to a little bit of a slow start. Maybe Duke has a little bit more energy defensively that makes it difficult for Jackson Dart and all that to move the ball, and it turns into a low-scoring game. I talked to J.J. Jackson and Manny Diaz liking to get into rock fights was a topic of conversation that came up. That is what Manny Diaz wants. He wants to play offense as slow as humanly possible, and he wants to make this a defensive rock fight as it goes. Now, Ole Miss defensively, very good unit with lots of talented players, even outside of the top crust Senior Bowl East-West Shrine Game level players. There's still guys like Jam Brown, Xavion Harris that Ole Miss fans can count on during this game. But those opt-outs for Duke means that they are going to be very scoring challenged. So it's going to be up to Jackson Dart and Logan Diggs if he plays. Inside the Rebels said a couple of days ago that Logan Diggs is going to play this game. And video that was released by the bowl game showed number 22 playing in the backfield with Jackson Dart in the bowl practices. So I would expect Logan Diggs to play tomorrow. We're not looking for Logan to rush for 115 yards or 150 yards or anything like that. I would like 5 carries for, 36 yards and have decent vision and burst when he does it. Ole Miss needs to see what Logan Diggs can do to determine whether or not they need 1 running back in the portal or 2. That is what's going on right now. Logan Diggs, it looks like he's going to play. I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what he will do. Now, remember, last year when Logan Diggs transferred to Ole Miss, he was the best running back that Ole Miss got in the transfer portal. Period, bar none. He was much higher than anybody else. They went into the spring transfer portal window, which doesn't historically work out, and picked up Rashad Amos and picked up Dominic Thomas and those guys. Didn't quite work out. They are heading off to different areas. You have Dominic Thomas. I think he's still there. But Logan Diggs was the crown jewel of that running back class. So Ole Miss fans getting to see Logan Diggs will be a big deal. Speaking of Logan Diggs, this is about 2025 a little bit too. This game, we talked with Brad Logan last night, and he mentions like, hey, this is really kind of like a spring game. Ole Miss doesn't do things spring-wise like everybody else. So this game is kind of a de facto spring game, that extra film that you're looking forward to. So it'll be important for Ole Miss to kind of handle business early, get the starters out of the game, and let's see what the backups look like, including Austin Simmons. Everybody knows Austin Simmons and what he can bring. Everybody remembers his drive against the Georgia Bulldogs to where he basically kept Ole Miss in the game. And once he did that, Ole Miss was able to kind of take it over. Austin Simmons over the course of the season, not eye-catching, eye-popping numbers, 18 to 31, 248, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. But if you want to look at it, Eli Manning's redshirt freshman year, he had numbers much worse than that. So if you want to look at what Austin Simmons can do as a redshirt freshman and what Eli Manning did, his numbers compare very favorably. But going into what could be an important 8-month period, leaving this Gator Bowl and into the beginning of the Georgia State game in Oxford, it is going to be imperative on Austin Simmons, because if you look at the transfer portal quarterbacks that have visited, none of them have signed with Ole Miss. And Ole Miss has a good track record of once they get people on campus, they sign them. The reason they're not signing is because of Austin Simmons. Austin Simmons, knowing that he can expect to be the guy, is probably the reason that room is not signing. Now, if you want to look at 2025 and talk about that a little bit, the question needs to be asked if A.J. Maddox, after his spring that's coming up, is he good enough to be the backup quarterback and you're just looking for a scholarship third quarterback? Or do you need to go out and find a true backup quarterback? Do you want somebody to push Austin Simmons? All of these questions need to be answered, and it's why that Lane Kiffin's making $10 million a year, because he has to make those decisions and live with the answers. So we'll see exactly how it looks with 2025. But players like Nareel White, players like Daquan Wright, those younger guys lining up and playing. Aiden Williams, I would love to see Aiden Williams on the field versus the Duke Blue Devils to see exactly how that looks. Defensively, there's some young guys that I'd like to see fit in. Cam Franklin, William Eccles, Jam Brown playing a good role, Xavion Harris, the defensive line that is going to be potentially next year's defensive line. DJ Holmes, is this the game that DJ Holmes kind of arrives and shows up after the Princely pitch count ends up? You have Suntaran Perkins. I want to see him roll out. I think he's like a sack and a half away from the Ole Miss school record. That is what I'm looking for in this game. And all of these reasons, by the way, is the reason I think that Ole Miss is going to win the game. Ole Miss has a ton of depth on the defensive side of the ball, and they have excellent skilled players, and they have 3 quarterbacks in Jackson Dart, Austin Simmons, and A.J. Maddox that would be starting for the Duke Blue Devils on Thursday. You mix all of that together, it gets interesting. And if Logan Diggs can just run the ball a little bit and provide a little bit of what Quinshawn did, not run it 30 times like Quinshawn did against Penn State last year, just enough to where it's a threat, you'll see this offense all of a sudden appear dangerous, and it might just it might infuriate some people if we're going to be honest about it. Coming up in our final segment, we break down how Ole Miss should approach tomorrow's 80th annual Gator Bowl, plus we dive into the late line movement. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown in the game and how many points each team is going to score. It's thrilling. It really is. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so we're getting into the last segment in this Why Ole Miss Wins episode of the podcast. And the reality of this is, in this bowl game, Ole Miss should win the game because they are the better team. Now, we have seen multiple double-digit lines that Ole Miss was the favorite this season go poorly. Ole Miss lost the game against Florida. Ole Miss lost the game against Kentucky. That happens. So weird can happen. And bowl game weirdness is always a possibility. But if you want to look on paper with the way things are and just assume that everything just performs at average, both teams kind of perform at average, Ole Miss should win this game going away. And I'll put it to you like this. My prediction in this game, I have Ole Miss winning the ball game 38-10 over the Duke Blue Devils. Duke is a good team, and this is no shade on the Duke Blue Devils, but whenever they have a quarterback opt out of the game, it can get weird. It can get crazy. And that happening to the Duke Blue Devils, that put them in a very, very bad spot. You want to look at it, the line is already starting to move. It's gone up like 3 points in a day. Ole Miss is now favored by 17.5 points. The over-under is actually dropped down by a point. It's down to 51.5 points. That lets you know kind of a lot, honestly. 51.5 and a 17-point line. I just genuinely think my 38-10 is about the right thing because the backups, I think once the backups get into the game, Ole Miss's backups are superior to Duke's backups, which means that if Duke plays the game just like Ole Miss does of playing all their players, you're going to see a stretching out of what the lead could actually be. We'll see exactly how it goes. These videos have always been my favorite, all of the course during the season. I love Why Ole Miss Wins videos. Just absolutely fantastic. Early this week, I was at the Under Armour All-America game. For those who don't know, I talked about it on the podcast last night with Brad and Logan, but I'll bring it up at the end of this one as well. I did a video right after live on the scene at the Wild World of Sports in Orlando. But these are just kind of a quick thought process that I'm having right now. I talked to multiple national analysts at the game that was covered that said they would not be surprised if Deuce Gerald was the MVP of the game. And the reason for that is they just said the skill set of Deuce Gerald is perfect for an all-star game. And when you look at what he's going on, his pass rushing ability, he is a smooth looking dude. He is a really smooth guy. And I think that Deuce Gerald has a chance to be really good. I talked to him on Sunday and he let me know, it's like, hey, this is what I'm looking for before I would commit to Ole Miss, if I'm going to commit to Ole Miss. This is what I want to find out. And he told me a couple of things about some of the other schools that are recruiting him as well. A really good player. Another 2026 that popped up that everybody should pay attention to is Tristan Keys. He is the wide receiver out of Hattiesburg, and he's legit. He's real. He is that real guy. He caught a couple of passes in 7-on-7 that were actually fairly difficult passes that he made look really easy. He is the type of person that could come in as a freshman, and I would not be surprised at all if he's on the field quite a bit. He reminds me a lot, honestly, of Caleb Cunningham. But his smoothness coming in, and he played a lot of slot, is something to keep an eye on as well. Saw Keon Young as well. I really like Keon. He's my favorite player in this class that Ole Miss signed. Keon was a little bit, it looked like he had a little bit of nerves in the day one of the Under Armour practice, which I can understand that a little bit. I mean, he's 17, 18 years old, at Under Armour practice, and he's going to arrive at Ole Miss on January 21st. So he's going to be a spring enrollee. And Cortez Thomas, I was very impressed at Under Armour practice. He is the guy that was lining other Under Armour players up. He was taking a leadership role on the back end of that secondary. He's very versatile. He plays on the outside, on the inside. And I think he's going to be a safety at the next level. And when you look at the Ole Miss defense, a Keon Young and a Cortez Thomas and a Ladarian Clark, he has a chance to be the 3 for the next 4 years for Ole Miss. I do think one of them is going to end up getting on the field a lot as a true freshman. These are some talented dudes. Some talented dudes. Again, this was the first year that 2026s, that juniors were allowed in the Under Armour game. They were in it. They looked really good. They did not look out of place. Now, a little bit thoughts that I had overall. The overall defensive line group looked different than it has in years past. Last year with like Williams and Wary or whatever his name is, it was a different looking beast on the defensive line. Offensive line, there's some massive dudes out there. And the quarterbacks are like KJ Lacey and the kid from Colorado coming in as well. So we'll see exactly how it goes. But I had a good time at Under Armour this week. I do want to say thank you to everybody for having me and taking such good care of me. And it was a ton of fun. So on that note, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there, and your support means the world to us. We love being the Ole Miss morning show for the fan base. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to those podcasts. Howdy toddy, everyone.